Chris Level, RedRaidersports.com, Tech hosting Houston this week, and they'll honor Mike Leach this week too. And then, hey, just around the corner, two teams in need of a win this weekend, Texas Tech in Waco to play Baylor. Chris, thanks for your time with Craig and Paul, and I'm David Smoak. Man, there was a lot of steam over the week, over the summer, off-season, a 5-game winning streak, Shuck back and healthy. Where is everybody right now?
Yeah, it's been a bit, hey, sports, right? You never know what you're going to get. Yeah, it's funny because I think there was obviously a lot of talk about Tech, and I think there was a lot of talk about, Baylor and Oklahoma State kind of being in that tier, maybe not the favorite tier like with Texas and Kansas State, and then they just all three of them kind of come out of the gate and it doesn't look great, to start. I think with here, depends on how you want to look at it. You're 1-3. There's no way around that. That is not what anybody signed up for. It's not what anybody thought you'd be. It's all about results. If you're looking for, positives, you say, man, you were right there and should have had a win over Oregon, which is one of the best teams in the country, it looks like. But, again, just played them, to the end and couldn't get it done. Yeah, the Shuck injury is just, unfortunately, we're kind of used to seeing that around here. And but I think most of the fans were kind of ready for Baron Morton anyway. I hate when the fan base kind of gets split between two guys. It's just, you just want to win, and like whatever the coaches feel like gives you the best chance. You get behind that guy. But there was a lot of support here for Baron, and it's going to be his show going forward. But yeah, I mean, it's just there's a lot of frustration up here. But I think I was around Joey yesterday and around a lot of the guys today, and they're frustrated too. They get the fans' frustration and all those things, but you still got 8 games to go, and you've been right there. Maybe that's what's the most frustrating thing, and that's what fans don't want to hear is how close you've been. 4-0 and 4-0 in 1-score games last year, and then this year you're 0-3 in those same things. So that's just that's sports sometimes.
Chris, I mean, if you look at the last season and this season, just as kind of where Texas Tech would be, 1-3 to start a year in a coach's first year would have made more sense in the way they started out on like a house on fire last year. Overall, is this program still, in spite of the first 4 games, where you think it needs to be going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I still think they have a pretty good team. I mean, I can't call them a contender for the league or anything like that right now. I think you have to, remove them from those conversations until they start to rattle several wins off. But they're recruiting at a high level. I think that they're going to start to deal with some injuries, unfortunately, right now. They've missed, they've been missing their starting middle linebacker since the opener against Wyoming. That obviously hurt them, and now the Shuck injury. There's a few other issues, and every team deals with some of this stuff. But because what's funny is I was talking about this on a podcast I was doing this morning. You started off 3-1 last year, and which is obviously opposite this year. However, at one point last year, you were also 4-5 at one point, and then you won out and won 4 games to end the season. And that's what everybody was feeling good about. That's what created a lot of this momentum, and Tyler Shuck had a lot to do with that. So I don't know, maybe you get the inverse this year and you can kind of get hot here. I don't know. But it's just if some of those 1-score games would have gone differently last year and this year, it's kind of the same, but it just so happened they were all in one lump. I mean, 3-0 in overtime games last year, 4-0 in the 1-score games, and then this year it's like you just can't get over the hump with some of it. You can't figure out a way to win a game at the end. And I think I told you guys this when I was on in August. I think my line to you was their strength of this team was that there weren't any weaknesses on paper. However, one concern that I had was you replaced an elite kicker from last year who helped you win all of those close games. He was 21 of 25 on the season. He hit a lot of clutch kicks, and I just didn't know if they had a dude anywhere. I don't know what the playmaker is. And, I think I even said you hoped one would emerge, but like when it's not going well, who do you throw it to? Who do you hand it to that can just go win you a game or go score for you and make it happen? And I still don't know if they have that. And So that's kind of been part of the problem too.
Yeah, no, I remember you saying. I remember you tapping the brakes a little bit on all that hype. Now, with Shuck out, I mean, I guess let's start. What's just kind of the feeling of just for him? I mean, all he's been through at this point. I guess in theory he could technically come back later in the year, right, Chris? But I mean, we're talking weeks and weeks from now, and he's obviously been through a lot prior to this. Just what was the heartbreak level for that young man on Saturday night?
Well, regardless of anybody's opinion about who they thought should be the quarterback here, I mean, I just nobody wants to see a young man go out like that. That's it. Just in that it was a pretty gruesome injury. He's in a good place, thankfully. He's a very mature kid. He's widely respected in that locker room and from his coaches and all those things. And he'd earned all that respect because of how hard he worked and all that. And it's just like the guy just can't. Just bad luck, man. It's unfortunate. But that's just, he played 15 total games at Oregon, and he's going to end up playing 15 total games here. I don't think you'll see him the rest of the year. I mean, I don't buy that. And he can get a medical red shirt from a couple of years ago. I think he's probably played his last game at Texas Tech, whether he moves on and tries to go play professionally or even uses that medical to go do something else somewhere else. I just don't envision him coming back here for a fourth year under the circumstances and all those things. But it's just unfortunate. And that's, his legacy here will unfortunately be what could have been, and I think when he was the starter, for the most part, it was pretty good, but we never got a big body of work other than that 4-game stretch, last year. And he hadn't played particularly great this year, but it wasn't bad either. It was just, but I was kind of ready to see if he could get himself in a rhythm and get the offense in a rhythm, but we're not going to get a chance to see that.
Since Joey McGuire took the job, everything has been a honeymoon, and that's the way it happens. And then, of course, the way the season ended, despite a few struggles. How, in your opinion, has he handled 1-3? Has he got a little edge to him? Is he getting paranoid, or is he just the same person?
Same guy. Yeah, and he will tell you, hey, I get the criticism. He said this yesterday. I get the criticism. I understand it. I'm thinking the same things. And I even had, his associate head coach, Kenny Perry, Joey's best friend. Kenny said to me today, it was a direct quote. He goes, I hope our fans are pissed off. He goes, they should be. He goes, we're all pissed off, frustrated. And that's the way, because that's what makes this a good job, because people care. And yeah, but there's a lot of frustration up here, and he gets it, but, it's not, it's about results, and they all understand that. And, thankfully, they have a lot of time left on the schedule to kind of do something about it. But it's just, but to answer your question, David, he's the same guy. And I think that, he even said yesterday, I can change. I can give you an all shucks. I hope we can get this thing turned around deal, because that's just not me. I believe in these kids. I believe in this team, and he's just not wavering at all. And I think you have to be true to who you are.
Outside of just the quarterback play and the lack of playmakers, I know, Chris, there's been lots of talk about Zach Kitley and the play calling. Do you see that as much of an issue as maybe the fans do? And I know that's what fans will often do, is want to point fingers in directions. But what can they do differently, you feel like, offensively, outside of just Jaron Bradley going off or Taj Brooks just completely taking over? How do you see them kind of correcting course in that regard?
Yeah, Taj Brooks has been the least of their problems.
Right.
I think they're running the ball really well. I think he's a really good running back. I think the offensive line is kind of figuring that part out. And, people point to play calling, but it's also worth pointing out, your receivers dropped 9 passes on Saturday. You had a wide open touchdown. People are asking, why didn't you try to run the ball on one of the last 4 plays when you're at the 11-yard line? And yet on the third down, you drop a wide open touchdown pass. Jaden York, one of the tight ends, is just literally standing all by himself, and it just went right through his fingers. And otherwise, they tie it up, go to overtime, and maybe we're having a different conversation. But that's the way it goes. So yeah, when you score 13 points though, around here especially, people are going to ask questions, and Zach understands that. And that just comes with the territory, especially here. On offense, they're kind of spoiled around here, and I get it. It's funny, y'all mentioned Mike Leach's name earlier, and all that. He kind of started that. That's just what people are used to. They're used to scoring, 35 points, and on a Saturday is sometimes like, well, what's wrong with the offense? But when you score 13, and it's been fascinating because I think the fans want them to run the ball more, because that's what has been working. And so Taj, there was a career high in carries on Saturday, 25. He handled it, and he can handle it. But that's just not what you typically see in the sport in general, whether it be college or pro or high school for that matter. We don't see the 30 carry a guy anymore, but fans are kind of wanting a little bit more of that because that's what's been working. But Taj is also not a guy that's going to take it. He's not Bijan Robinson. He's not going to take it and go 80 yards and kind of break the game open. He's a grinder, and he's really good at what he does. He's great in pass pro and in between the tackles, and he's going to get some tough yards, but he's also not going to just, bust the game wide open and threaten to score every time he touches it either. But, yeah, there's definitely been some criticism about, just the offense in general, and that comes with Joey and Zach and the QB and on it goes.
Chris, if you don't mind, you mentioned Mike Leach, and I mentioned it earlier. Is this going to be a weekend of celebration, or is it still kind of surreal?
No, David, I think, and that was very personal to me. I know I'm not doing what I'm doing with not for Mike, and I've known him for a long time, and it was just sad when, when he passed away and all those things. And I think there was a time where I thought this would never happen. I wish that he was a part of this, like a lot of people do. I don't know what a lot of people's feelings are on it. I think, though, that to answer your question, it will be very much celebratory. I think his wife and children will be in Lubbock and part of the ceremony on Friday night and then honored at halftime. I think there'll be a loud ovation, and I'm probably as excited about that as anything this weekend because I think the man deserves it. I think and I appreciated what Dana Holgerson said, who obviously his team will be here this weekend because Dana was as big a part of Mike's, tenure here as anybody. And he was just glad to see that everybody was kind of back on the same page and trying to mend that fence and all those things. And so I think it's important because that was an important era in this school's history. And I'm glad to see that at some level, at least they can get back on the same page with everything.
Yeah, I bet remember back at Big 12 Media Days when we talked to Dana, he joked about, of course they scheduled us for that weekend because he was talking about how he's going to cry his eyes out. And he just wishes that, he's glad that they're celebrating, but he's like, man, I'm going to be a baby when the time comes. But as far as Dana and the Cougars, Tech's no stranger to playing this program, but now it is a Big 12 game. Just what's kind of the outside of the Leach celebration and all of that will be going on? What are the thoughts on Houston coming in and this conference game and what people would like to see?
Yeah, well, you've played Houston the last couple of years. I think you've won 10 of the last 11 against the Cougs, so kind of have their number. But the storyline here is not Dana or Mike Leach from a football standpoint. It's Donovan Smith and your old quarterback coming in here. Mm-hmm. What's fascinating is I think Texas Tech had a full quarterback room last year, and all three guys started games, and we talked about them all in this conversation here. And now you're going to face one of them, and I think it's kind of it's just ironic that you had a quarterback injury and all that, and then right here Donovan comes because he would have been maybe in line to either play or start or whatever had he stayed, but he wanted an opportunity to go play, and he left here way above board. But that'll be kind of surreal because guys, last year in this game, it was in Lubbock. He converted a 4th and 20 to get that game.
I remember
to overtime and all these things, and he threw one up to Jerron Bradley and. They ended up winning that game. Tyler was out, and I think Barron was kind of dinged up, and and all that. And so, yeah, Donovan, kind of helped you beat Houston last year. Now he comes in here to lead the Cougs. So it's kind of just the days of the portal, man. You get some of these weird scenarios, but that's kind of the storyline here. But it's an important game. Houston's trying to get some momentum going. I think Texas Tech trying to get on track, obviously, and. Joey's been 7-2 at home since he got here, and I think they need to get on track and get this one for sure.
Chris, thank you as always. Appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks, boys. Appreciate
Chris
you guys
Level,
having me on.
Red Raider Sports, also Texas Tech sideline reporter with us on 365 Sports.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun elements there in play.